Good morning, everyone. Thank you for attending our Spotlight webinar series. This month's webinar, as you know, covers the Windows 7 and 8 migration. My name is Brian Murphy. I'm a marketing specialist here at DISYS. I'm joined by our presenters for today, Lee Mix and Jim Bloomingdale. Lee is the Director of Global ISS at DISYS. He has over 25 years of experience in the IT industry, specific to platform and client services, enterprise services, and end-user computing. Jim is DISYS' principal architect within the platform and client services. For over 15 years, he's held positions in migration strategy services in the areas of application compatibility, remediation, packaging, and deployment. At this point, Lee, I'm going to go ahead and give you the floor. I just wanted to remind everybody that if you have any questions, go ahead and type them into the question box. We'll get to as many as we can, but we may need to email you the answers after the webinar. Thanks. Lee, you want to take it away?
Sure. Thank you, Brian. Welcome, everyone, to DISYS Spotlight campaign for Windows 7 migration. We're going to cover strategies, tools, and lessons learned. Just to introduce this, we're going to be focused in the areas of application discovery, rationalization, compatibility testing and remediation, packaging, and the deployment aspects of the Windows environment. Just to introduce DISYS, for everyone that's new here, DISYS was founded in '94. It's a minority-owned business enterprise. Roughly speaking, a little over $330 million in revenue, with 32 offices globally, 3,500 employees. On the global services portfolio, I wanted to highlight this here for everyone in the audience that will have an opportunity to view DISYS within the competency areas that we operate. The infrastructure support services is where this delivery component lives within Windows 7 migrations. However, in order to have a little bit broad and depth as an organization, you obviously focus in other areas from a competency perspective, which is spans for the application services, business and program services, support services, cloud enablement, and mobile solutions. In this particular competency, as I explained, there are a number of services that infrastructure support services provide, specifically in the data center, security and assessment and integration, messaging, network, help desk. Specific to this competency is the end-user computing element, which we'll get a little bit deeper into. Wanted to state the purpose of why we're here today. As most of you may know, that XP was released on October 25th of 2001, which is really kind of a great measurement here for this product. It suggests that it's got a very solid foundation from an operating capability. It's very robust and has been providing services in the environment for quite some time. As we go through the presentation, we'll highlight some of the benefits that Windows 7 brings to the table, as well as Windows 8. But fundamentally speaking, on April 8th, 2014, it will no longer be supported. No new patches, fixes will be available beyond this point. And some analysts estimate that the operating cost is going to be 5x the current value of their support for the XP environment today. So the idea is to get off the platform as soon as we can possibly do this, and we'll talk about some of our lessons learned in that environment, some where the customer base is currently standing on trying to get a big rush to get this moved out of the environment. DISYS, particularly within our environment, have performed over 250,000 migrations for our customers. We're fully equipped to handle the small, medium, and large enterprise level deployments. I'm going to turn this over to Jim Bloomingdale to talk about some of the Windows 7 benefits. Jim?
Hi.
You should have it. You should have control now.
All right. All right. You should be able to see the screen now. Want to talk about Windows 7 and its improvements over Windows XP. Obviously, Windows XP has been this workhorse in the industry for years and years now, and people have become very accustomed to it. But as the system moves, as the systems move further into the future, we look at a couple of things. One is the 64-bit computing, which Windows 7 brings to the table, and something that most companies should be starting to look at and starting to see if that's something in the future, as operating systems will start to be less and less reliant on the Windows 32 platform and more on the Windows 64. We're talking about things like user account control. In the past, many people had administrative control over their own desktop. They were able to install applications and do pretty much what they wanted. And it caused some issues where people were installing things that maybe they shouldn't have been. And Windows 7 brings this user account control into play, which allows administrators to further protect their computing platforms by restricting the kinds of things that some of their people may or may not be able to put onto their systems. Windows 7 also gives us some great tools for diagnosing problems and really improves the remote assistance and management. In the past, a lot of companies had used many third-party tools to do that, but now are relying more on the Windows 7 tools for that remote assistance and being able to connect up to a user's computer and perform troubleshooting or possibly reconfiguring of different things. And that's a big cost savings, not having to have that other third-party tool in place. The reliability piece of it, Windows 7, you have to reboot a lot less than you did on previous platforms. Doesn't mean you don't have to do it at all. You certainly, that's the first troubleshooting tip is, have you tried turning it off, turning it back on again? So it is still there, but it is a lot less than it was. The system restore improvements are there, as well as the scripting piece. Windows 7 fully embraces Windows Scripting Host. I'm sorry, the old tool was Windows Scripting Host. Now we're talking about PowerShell. PowerShell is the new scripting tool that Microsoft is putting in place across all of their platforms and is fully embraced by Windows 7 and is able to be utilized to automate a lot of the different processes and different things that we may need to do with our system. Some of the other pieces, some of the security and security management and the firewall pieces that are put in place and the driver protection, these are all a number of different security things that Microsoft had seen about where some of the trouble was coming, causing blue screens or causing other errors in previous operating systems. Drivers were a big issue, and so they put in a whole process for authorizing the appropriate drivers that would work and would cause less issues. The firewall is built in and is fully manageable through group policy. And again, if you want that, whether it be internal or external firewall, and you can manage that easily with Windows 7. So inside of my organization, I may not want a firewall on my desktop just because it causes blocking to different applications or things like that. But the user takes their laptop out to Starbucks or some other coffee shop, you may want that firewall to be in place then, and you can set that up so that it is off in your environment and then on when they go outside of the environment. The deployment piece of this is another big example of where Windows 7 has come a long way. Microsoft has fully embraced the imaging process and have built it in with their SCCM product, and it ties in with many of their other products so that the imaging process is much easier to push out and configurable than it has been in the past. And the management of it, we can actually take the Windows image once it's in place and apply patches directly to the image rather than having to pull it back down, put the patches on, and then reload it back up. We can kind of slipstream some of those patches and some of that information into there. The other big piece, of course, is application compatibility, and I'll talk about that a little bit more coming up here. So applications, the pushing out of an operating system is, well, while it can be complex, it's not the biggest part of it. The biggest part is trying to figure out all of these applications that you have in your environment and how are they going to function on the new platform, whether that be 32 or 64-bit. And sometimes one of the big tricks is just figuring out what applications are you using. especially if people have been allowed to run their own applications. You may have a lot of applications or a lot of different versions that are sitting in place, and there's a number of tools that we can bring to the table, and there are other tools that are out there that go out and help us start to identify all the different applications and the different versions that are in place, whether that be SCCM or the Application Compatibility Toolkit, Altiris, or just Excel. However we're going to put this, we have to consolidate this all into this master database and then start taking a look at it and deciding, do we really need all of these different versions, and which ones can be gotten rid of and which ones can be consolidated into the latest versions of those applications. So we go through this rationalization process, which we get all of the inventory together, understand the business units, look at the departments, how did we get all of this information, and then start categorizing them into different formats and determining what are business critical applications, what are nice to haves, what are applications that can be upgraded, what are applications that cannot be upgraded, and is there an alternative for that. Identify all of those business critical applications and hopefully start looking at that version control. Deciding, okay, if we're using Acrobat Reader 8 or 9, can we move all of those into a later version? Certain applications will require us to have multiple versions of our product, i.e. like Java. Certain applications may only work with this version of Java or that version of Java, and so we may have to have multiples of those available. But this is part of the process, is going through and determining not only what applications are available, but are they reliant on other applications? And if they are, which ones do we need to keep in place to make sure that those function? Once you do all of that, hopefully you can take that large number of applications that you've had and reduce that down. And this not only helps you in managing the applications and troubleshooting and figuring out what's going on, but it can also be a big cost savings, just paying for different licensing versions that may or may not be out there. So we get the sources, we put them into that business critical application space, which is the most important. These are the ones that you have to have. There are the important applications, which are very functional. The nice to have applications, you may have quite a few of these nice to haves. People like to use them, but you have to balance the cost of those applications versus how much gain are you getting out of them. And then there are the unimportant applications, or applications that your business has decided you may not want to be using anymore, or you want to remove from your system. And get your totals of your applications and start making sure that you have a good clean list. It's not a process that a lot of companies go through a lot, so during a operating system migration like this is a great time to really take a look at all of those applications and start really deciding which ones do you need to keep and which ones can you move away from. Once we've got those applications, then we need to start looking at, are they compatible? And many applications are. Most Windows XP applications will come right over to Windows 7 and function without an issue. But when I say most, there are those that don't, and those that don't are the ones that cause us the headaches, and we have to start looking at what can we do. Often the easy answer is go to a later version. Well, that may or may not be an easy answer depending upon the dependencies of those applications, and there are other processes that can be done if we can't go to a later version, or if there is no later version available, including virtualization. Virtualization is a way that we can put the application and have it think that it's running on a Windows XP environment, and actually have that application function in the Windows 7 environment. Also, compatibility with Office. Oftentimes in a desktop migration, it's also a good time to migrate your Office versions. And Office 2010 is the primary one that most people are rolling out, although some people are starting to roll out Office 2013 as well. And deciding how many applications do you have that interact with Office, because the Office itself migration can be tricky when you start talking about the migrating of documents and the changing and formatting or things like that may happen. But you also may have other applications that are tying in and using Office documents. So we have to be aware of those. And then start making some determinations about Windows 64-bit as well. Should we start rolling out 64-bit? Will these applications run in 64-bit, or do they have to run in a 32-bit environment? And making those determinations to decide where it should go with that. We come up with some automated testing reports, which we can go out and start taking a look at. And Windows 7 has been out for a bit now, so Microsoft does collect some of this information, and there are other information out there where we can run some automated testing and start determining, how many of these applications actually fit in or have compatibility with Windows 7, and determine which ones we need to, if we need to virtualize anything, or if there are any that are not valid for 64-bit, and which ones can go, and start taking a look at those, and then again, go back to that list again and start determining, do we really need that application, or is it worthwhile to upgrade or to move to something else in place. Once you've got the final list of applications that are available, then we have to start packaging these applications. Now, some applications are easier than others. They may come with pre-configured MSI files for our installation and scripts that we can use, but there is still a testing process of making sure that it pushes down automatically. And after determining which applications we want to be packaged that are going to be distributed out there, we have to validate the instructions, get the raw media, and start putting test cases together, do the capture of the package. And this can be in a number of different ways. Sometimes we can do it through the setup file. Sometimes we have to actually capture the image from another computer as the installation happens, and then pull that information in and incorporate those best practices for repackaging. A lot of people are repackaging these applications, so there's a great wealth of knowledge out there that we draw on to be able to make sure that the package meets the requirements that are there. Then start looking for conflicts. Just because this package pushes down and it works great, doesn't mean that there isn't a conflict with another package out there. And this is a big part of the process, is looking at the different packages and which ones are going to be on the machines together, and making sure that we're looking for any kind of conflicts that might be caused because of that. Once we do that, we do the quality check, we install and uninstall testing, make sure that all the functionality is there for those, and then submit that package for deployment in the environment. The image development, once we have the packages ready, we have to come up with a final image. And the image really is the Windows 7 base of knowledge, or it is the base that we use for the computers. Some companies will use one base image and apply that to everyone. Others may have multiple different base images that they will apply depending upon the needs and the software that is available or required for those particular users. So it's really a process of installing the operating system, configuring the applications, and then capturing that image to its network location. Once we've captured the image, then we can start putting it on network shares and getting it ready for deployment out to the end users and to their desktops. And that deployment can come in a variety of different ways, whether it be with Windows PE and the ImageX, as you see here, or with other tools that are in place for pushing those images out there. We've started to have a lot of luck with PXE deployments for pushing those images out. Okay, so that's the basics of the image development. At this point, I'll give it back to Lee
Okay, thank you, Jim. So as you can tell, there's a lot of prep work that goes into the environment for getting the image, the application sets ready that is going to prep the environment for the next phase, which is actually going into productivity. So in this area, we're going to focus on the people, process, and tools, which becomes really the building blocks for a lot of organizations, whether it's small, medium, or large, or even global for that matter. What you have to have is the ability to deliver a feet to the street model to serve the client base that is ready to deploy the image in their environment. DISYS has spent a lot of time in this area in developing out methodology and repeatable processes in order to deliver this to the client base. And there's some very basic things that you need to put into the ingredients that make up the composite of that deployment team. First, you have to understand your geography footprint, lay out a plan that makes sense with the customer's timeline, and focus in on what their critical business stream criticality paths are. It could be the VP level or an IT department, or however they want to start the deployment. The communication plan associated with establishing any of these building blocks are going to be paramount. So one of the things that we focus on and our lessons have learned is that if we can just communicate, and have a forum whereby the stakeholders and decision makers are having that communication plan established within the organization, is going to make for a very collaborative deployment. We have walked into some circumstances where they've got a very quick ramp, and the timing associated with a quick ramp doesn't do anybody any favors, and you're always having to play catch up within the environment to make sure that you're covering all the steps that are necessary to get the environment ready. So getting caught out within that environment doesn't hold anybody in favor. We come at it from a structured perspective within our Center of Excellence that's supported, and I'll have another slide that'll demonstrate some of how we support within the environment, not only project management wise, but technically as well. The main course here is to make sure that we're understanding the structure at each one of those locations. We've been able to, over the past 3 years, refine our process when it comes to our support teams. We always deploy in the same manner, and my recommendation is to make sure that those repeatable processes are sound. You have a good way to deploy that out, and you have a capability to support the geography you're going after. Our defined structure stays very flat. We'll have a technical project manager that is over the entire program at a program level. He'll go down to the leads at each one of the locations if the footprint's large enough to demand that. And then we'll have a lead technician with the install techs, and then the aftercare support that goes, and then a fallback to the command center to handle the volume and influx of calls, which becomes very important because the typical existing help desk is either going to be ready to receive this change in the environment, or they're going to look to you to put a Band-Aid in that area and assist in that area. And where we've been successful is to be able to control that whole piece, if you may, so that way you're taking it from the start to the end when it comes to the support component for the change environment. You've also got to have a very good change control process within this environment because it is very dynamic and things change almost on a weekly basis. So within, as I discussed, we have our delivery method that has been tried and proven over the past 3 years and refined. And this is our basic model. If you see across the top, we have our client project delivery team that lives within the training, the onboarding, the continuous improvement, project management element that is supported below by the SME pool, if you may, the Center of Excellence. And then on the right, you've got all the relationship and governance models that go in play to support the work streams that are either deployed on-site or off-site client premises. The technology lifecycle management or our competency method is, again, sticking with a very simple method to deliver within the environment, keeps things simple from the communication path and understanding the disciplines within the IT domains that we're delivering in, whether that's the COE that lives within that foundation platform of our domain experts that is then supported on the next layer out from our subject matter expert pool, and then ultimately supported by the program and project management for the deployed tech streams that are on or off premise working in the environment. So developing the roadmap for efficiency, we believe here at DISYS that the tracking and reporting is the cornerstone for the success. If we're not communicating, again, I'm going to use this word a lot, the communication to the environment becomes key. Tracking that, reporting it, which includes your project plan development, risk mitigation, and some of the integration plans that you're pulling together as you're moving through the environment. Jim had showed you some of the reporting that came out of the application area and the image build. However, when it comes to progress and the issues management, because there will be problems in this environment,